Hi everybody, welcome back to an enhanced edition of the Stellium Astrology podcast. I'm Stephanie James, your host, and I have a special guest with me today, Melanie Draper, a friend of mine, not an astrologer, but somebody I met when fulfilling my Gemini Ascendant mission in life, which is to go and study lots of different courses. And Melanie and I met on a counselling and psychotherapy course that we both found ourselves interested in this subject at a certain point in our lives, and our paths crossed, which I'm so grateful for. But what was interesting about the course that we found ourselves on was that it taught us a lot of lessons, probably for the wrong reasons, but actually ultimately, you know, we got something out of it. But I thought it would be interesting for you guys to hear about our experience. And you know, most people that I talk to about this, whenever I share this story, people are usually quite shocked. I don't know, have you shared the story with anybody? And
I have with a few people, yeah, and exactly the same response, really. They're just shocked by it.
Yeah, it is totally out of the ordinary, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I'm glad we shared the experience, and actually I'm glad that I have a platform. You know, I think it's important to let people know that this stuff can go on, and to let it not really put you off, you know, where you want to be in life and what you want to do. If you've got your heart set on something, or if you really feel that you've got a calling, don't let this type of experience put you off. Yeah. But before we get started, I just wanted to ask you to kind of maybe introduce yourself a little bit, you know, your areas of interest, what you're studying, what you're planning on, your future plans.
Yeah, so I've always worked in construction since I left school. So I've been a materials buyer and worked for big house builders. And as much as I enjoyed the job, there was something kind of missing, really. My dad suffered a lot of anxiety and depression, and it kind of overshadowed the family life, really. And people used to talk quite negatively about it in my family. They didn't really explain anxiety to me. They kind of referred to it as just being this problem that was, you know, a grey cloud over the family. So I just had this negative association growing up as a child. I didn't really know what anxiety meant. I didn't realise that it was just quite a natural experience that people would suffer. And I suffered from it a lot in my 20s because I was almost very scared of it, and I didn't know what it was. It was just this negative thing in my family. That again, other family members used to speak very negatively about my dad. So I got kind of drawn into self-help and, you know, all of these kind of things to try and kind of fix myself and make myself feel better. And probably throughout my whole 20s, I could say I suffered from anxiety and tried all sorts of things to make myself feel better. I steered away from medication at the time when a doctor at one point kind of said, let's give you some beta blockers. And because of seeing my dad's experience with things, I was really, for me at that point, I didn't want to kind of go down that route. Now, obviously that is, you know, it's an appropriate route in some situations, but because of the thinking I had around it, it didn't seem appropriate to me in that time. So I steered away from it and picked up more books and did more courses and things, still working in construction. And then I just got to a point, it was kind of near on 30, and the anxiety was, people around me wouldn't have really noticed it was that bad, but it was quite crippling, really. I was so internally focused on my experience all the time that it was, you know, wasn't comfortable. I went to a retreat in Colchester, and I just saw something. It wasn't necessarily the content of what was going on there. I just saw something that lifted all of it. And that was after that week and that drive home, and I just experienced viewing the world quite differently. I knew I wanted to kind of share things and do more training with people to be able to help others. So that's what I did. And I did a few kind of courses that were very, they weren't necessarily qualifications. They were kind of, I did a training with a lady called Katie Abbott in London, and it was like peace, love and connection. And it was really lovely. But I was kind of thinking, how am I going to share this with people? This doesn't feel like a qualification. I don't have a psychology degree. I didn't have anything that I felt qualified me to be sitting in front of anyone and sharing, you know, some things that I'd learnt with them. So yeah, obviously we met. I'd had my daughter. I think Jess was probably only about one at the time. Was she one? 1.5 maybe.
Yeah, because she was born around the time my sister's little girl was born as well. So they're very
Yeah.
similar in age, I think, aren't they? They're quite close together in age, I
Mm.
think. So yeah,
And
probably about that.
it's funny when I look at it now, because we were super close, and I find it even strange that I went to that course where I met you and that I left her. Obviously she was with her daddy, but
Yeah.
she was still nursing at the time. And now I'm thinking, God, and what I've seen about this course is obviously the negativity around it and the situation of, we're so pleased we didn't enter into that any further. But also what's really stood out to me was my mindset at the time of doing it. So because Jess was small and I'd stopped my job, which had allowed me to buy a house, pay for everything myself, never rely on anyone. When I had my daughter, and that all changed, and my partner took everything over, which is fine because I was staying at home with my daughter, I had quite a lot of thinking about that. And in my head, I was kind of like, I need to do training. I need to do this. I need to do that. And I can see I was in a bubble at that point. And that course, it was made quite easy for me to be able to access. I didn't necessarily need qualifications as such to do it, like most, quality courses. And I just went for it. But now I can see it was more from the wrong place.
Yeah.
And then even when there was signs when I was there that there was something not right about it, because of my need to, I want this, I want this is what I want to do. I've got negative thinking about myself at the moment because I'm not earning money. I kept going with something that I knew didn't feel right. And that was a lot of the learning I'd actually taken from that is, like when I can see where I was in my head at that point, it was a very unhelpful place to be in. And even to the point that I remember you were way more sensible than me about it. I remember you were very logical about it, and I was almost quite irrational when we kind of realized that this wasn't good and we needed to kind of pull out of it. I think I'd paid a deposit, and I think you hadn't. And at the time, and I'd already done it, and the guy that was running the course kind of really put a lot of pressure onto me, and he was kind of like, well, almost insinuating he would take me to court and all of this. And I remember the anxiety, and I think some of the messages that I'd left you about it, I was like, oh my God. But again, I'd spoken to friends, and my daughter was very young, and I think I could see that there was this like primal protectiveness over me and my daughter and our home, because this guy knew where we lived, and I was wary of him. And it's funny, like now it seems really, really funny. But at that time, it kind of took over everything. And I look back and I think not only was I completely taken advantage of, but I just wasn't in the right place I was so keen on wanting something that I was able to probably ignore some signs. So yeah, I got a lot of learning out of that. Obviously I'm sure there's probably courses that are still being run like that, and
So I think really we really need to get into what happened. So my experience was that I turned up. I'd made some inquiries. I thought the website looked pretty good, actually. It was one of the reasons why I thought, well, this place looks quite credible. And I'd noticed that they were offering a C-Tech qualification. And this is for a counselling skills course, or a counselling and psychotherapy course. And I was Googling C-Tech, and what came up was Cambridge Technical, wasn't it? I Googled that and I thought, that sounds okay. This is before I knew to look at, a regulated, like I've now done counselling skills with the CPCAB, which is a, very, probably the highest regarded, they create counselling and psychotherapy courses across the UK. So a very reputable organisation. But before that, I didn't really know what you had to look for. And I didn't know the kind of thing that you should be exploring when looking for a course. So I found this one that was relatively local to me. And the cost was, I think it worked out to something like £10 a class. and it
it
was
wasn't
really cheap.
expensive. It
Yeah.
seemed reasonable, didn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and the way it was pitched on the website, it looked like it was a kind of pay-as-you-go course, and I thought, oh, I could afford that. Yeah, I could do that. And the thing that I couldn't find was kind of like a structured curriculum kind of layout. And when I turned up, he said to turn up 15 minutes early and fill out a form. And what shocked me on the form when I had to, like, beforehand, was he handed it to me, and it was a very, like, it wanted to know all about like my mental health history and stuff, which I've studied a lot of courses and I've never had to fill out questionnaires like that. And so I was reluctant to put anything down that I wasn't comfortable with, and I didn't. And when I got upstairs, I was surprised to see that it was nothing like the website. It was a small room in a tall building that was basically all glass windows, and it was a really, really, really hot summer's day, practically, wasn't it? It was like midsummer. And I looked around the room, and I just picked up on a vibe that just felt a bit off. And when I sat down, I noticed that it said it was pastoral counselling training. And I thought, I'm not sure if this is what I'm here, if I want to do this. I think I'm in the wrong place. I thought, do you know what? I'm just going to give it a go. It's one, I think you got 2 free classes, and then
it was 2, and then you signed up kind of more formally, didn't you, at that point?
Yes, exactly. So I decided to sit down, and that's when I kind of, don't know why, I think I just connected with you when you were talking and stuff, and I had no idea that you'd been the week before and this was your second free class.
I think that was true.
So I thought it was quite funny, and so I kind of got into what he was talking about. I found it very interesting. He obviously does have the qualifications himself. But when it came to the break time and sitting down and talking, I kind of found myself making a beeline for you and getting talking, and it was
I remember sitting down leaning against that wall, and I think we were eating biscuits or something, and I remember everybody was kind of bowing down to these two, weren't they, him and his partner? It was odd. It seemed odd.
It did seem odd. And it was also weird that we had to do sort of like, it was kind of like a break room, but it was in the hallway. There was nowhere to go. It was just
the triads were in
but it just seemed very odd. And I kind of thought, I kind of got something out of the first class. I was really pleased I'd met you, and we had a good laugh, didn't we? Because he looked just like Ned Flanders from The Simpsons. That's how we can refer to him. He's Ned, because he really looks like him so much.
Well, we refer to him as evil Ned now, don't we?
Like there's an evil Bart, there's an evil Ned as well. But so he was very much like that. But he was a very strange character. I got a lot of ego from him. I just got a lot of ego from him.
It was about him, wasn't it? A lot of it was about him.
But I remember sort of saying, he sent me a text after the first class and said, how did you enjoy it? And I said, I really enjoyed it, but because it went on longer than specified, I ended up missing my train, ended up getting back quite late, and I have to get up early for work, and it really kind of, it's a bit difficult for me to do that in the middle of the week. It's, if it was a Friday night, it'd be okay, but it was like, I think it was a Wednesday, wasn't it? Or a Tuesday. So, and he immediately fired back with, well, I remember when I did my psychotherapy training in, I think he said in Nottingham or something, and he said, or like I did it in London, and I had to commute from wherever, and he went on about this like 2-hour commute that he had to do every single week or something, and didn't show any kind of, it's like he took it personally that I said I have to, he had literally no idea about me or my background or what I did for a living, what time I got up in the morning, which is actually really early. I had to start work at 7:15. And I just kind of thought, this is a strange reaction from somebody running a course, especially a counselling course where they've done lots of training about self-awareness and, like being understanding and empathic. It didn't really compute. So I kind of decided that I would, the next week came and I had a lot going on. So I said, can I skip next week and come in the week after, just because I've got stuff going on? And he was like, that's fine. But you went to the following week, didn't you?
I did. So that was why I was probably a couple of weeks ahead of you in that sense, wasn't it?
Yes.
And then I signed up. Yeah, I signed up.
You'd signed up, didn't you then? That's when you handed over your contract, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And do you remember what happened during that class?
Yeah, I remember at that point being quite if we're talking about the same class, there was a lady that was on the course, and it seems that anyone that had done the course before was able to attend the classes afterwards, basically, if they'd qualified. So I thought that some of the people that were there, obviously there were some real characters there, I thought that was mainly what they were doing, but one of them started behaving in a really, really odd manner, and I actually felt quite threatened, not personally, but I felt very, very uncomfortable, because quite clearly they were having an episode of he just described very casually, after this lady had an episode within this class, that she was suffering from psychosis, and that we all have to be very accepting of it. He's very accepting of the fact that she's in this class, and basically he didn't say we're not to tell anyone about it, but that's kind of the impression that everybody got. And I felt very uncomfortable. I felt very unsafe, because she was quite, I guess, not erratic. She was lost in her own situation, and she should not have been there.
No.
And I think what it actually turned out is that she was a client of his that had worked with him. And for some reason, towards the end of however long they'd worked together, one of them found it appropriate for her to learn a counselling skill, which I now can see how at that time was wholly inappropriate for that lady. Really, really bad.
Because he was essentially her therapist, wasn't he?
He was her therapist.
And at the same time, he'd invited her to classes.
And then he'd invited her to classes, which I'm assuming she would have been paying for.
Yeah.
But I mean, you've got to think, if you've got issues going on and you're having therapy, to then suddenly go into a class where you're learning about how a therapist is working with you, at that stage for her, that again, completely inappropriate, completely not helpful, and potentially very dangerous, I think. And however qualified he was, which he did seem to have all the...
He does. He does.
Which was actually more scary, I thought.
I thought so too. Yeah.
And
I think it's dangerous, not just for that lady who was having the episode, but it was dangerous for everybody in the class.
Everybody.
Yeah.
And I just felt uncomfortable, the way it was almost kind of like, you're not really to... It was funny, I can't remember the way it was. It wasn't directly, don't share this with anyone, but there was definitely this feeling. And I remember talking to one of the girls in the toilets afterwards, and she seemed quite scared of him, if I'm honest. And I was trying, at this point, I was feeling very concerned. I realised that I had made a mistake at this point. And I remember trying to say a few things to her, to kind of say to her, look, if you want to say something, like, you can tell me, kind of thing. And she just seemed quite scared. And I'm laughing, but it's serious. It wasn't. And I get that, because when I turned round, I remember having a lot of conversations with you, and again, there was a place I was in, but I felt very uncomfortable, and he made it very difficult. And my partner at the time was just like, it's fine, we just ignore him, if we have to get a solicitor involved, it's fine. But I was really, it really got to me, actually. It really did get to me.
I think that I remember at the time you saying that you'd spoken to one of the girls in the toilet, and they said that he doesn't like it when you talk to each other outside of class, or something like that. And that's also not good. Like, when I studied my counselling skills course in more recent years, they actually encouraged us to have a group and to talk outside of class and to connect with each other and help each other with the studies. It felt very unstructured, it felt very disorganized, it felt very it almost felt a little bit like getting sucked into a bit of a cult, didn't it? It was just like, you get pulled into it, and then he's like this leader guy, his wife was running the school with him. It was literally like a 2-man operation, and everybody in the class looked like they had serious anxiety issues. Like, you know, there was like that guy that really struggled to like, he seemed like he had issues with just like even speaking in front of like a couple of other people, like really lacking in confidence. And you know, it just, looking around, I thought there's people that have been here for like a few years, and I think, what, coming to this room, sitting in this little circle of chairs in this cluttered room, and you know, following no real actual curriculum, and coming out of it with a CTEC qualification, which
that's
I've never.
Funny bit, isn't it?
Yeah.
When we discovered what that was.
Yes, exactly. So, and fortunately, I mean, just to give people a little bit of background, this happened. Was it in 2018 that it happened when we went to this?
I'm trying to think. In 2016, so that sounds about right. Yeah,
I think it may have been 2018. I remember the reason why I decided not to sign the contract, and I think I did go to 2 classes. I seem to remember I did go to 2, because I remember being at one with you and then another. And I think that in between somewhere that lady had an episode. I can't really remember. But I remember thinking, oh my gosh, you know, like I'm so glad that I'm so glad I can do astrology, because my reluctance was, yes, I was like, Mars is going retrograde. Yes, I was like, Mars is going retrograde in a couple of weeks, and it's, for me, it was in my area of contracts and things like that. And I thought, I don't want to sign anything because I just got a feeling that I'm going to regret that. And so I decided not to, and I didn't. And you know, I'm glad I didn't, because of what happened. However, you did sign the contract, and then almost immediately regretted it. And fortunately, well, there's the fortunate aspect of it was that you were able to use the qualification that you would have gained as a way of partially getting out of that contract, because it was pitched as though it was a Cambridge technical, which was kind of like a BTEC, but it was like a CTEC.
And I kind of said to him about it, I said, oh, so can I just have some information on this? And then he kind of said, oh no, it doesn't mean that, it means this. And that was what I used as that. And he kind of made out that was, you know, me, that was my fault, and that I should have, you know, and actually, I, you know, when I look back on the situation and I see where I was with it, I feel like it was very foolish, very, very foolish. I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change you, and I learned so much from it. But yeah, I can just, it really taught me a lot, actually.
We make mistakes in life, but I think that we both really learned a lot from it. Like I then had a bee in my bonnet about actually finding something really credible and really regulated because of it. And it made me, I've had a few bad experiences with things like this, which has made me realize how important it is to actually really research the kind of thing that you're going to be investing in, spending a lot of time on, especially because imagine if we'd studied that for years and then went to, you know, wanted to start working somewhere and they said, well, I don't really know what this qualification is. You've just wasted years of your life.
They'd done like their 3rd year and they were like, oh, I remember one of the girls there, she was like, I've done my 3rd year, I'm just going to get it finished. And then it was almost like, I'll just get it done and then I'll be free from them.
Yeah. It's
terrible.
Really, really strange. But yeah, so basically the qualification, which was a completely made up thing, you know, it's got any kind of real weight about it. You couldn't turn up and go, oh, I've got a diploma, I've been studying with them for 4 years and I've got this diploma course. They'd be like, never heard of it, you're going to have to start from scratch. You know, it's one of those things. And I fortunately had spoken to a few people that had studied counselling skills and done courses elsewhere where what they'd studied didn't really have any kind of impact as far as progressing in that area, and you know, actually maybe seeking work in that area at some point or another in the future. So I kind of had that in mind, that I really didn't want to invest in something that wasn't right. But when I discovered that CTEC wasn't even Cambridge technical and it was this convergence technologies qualification, I was like, okay,
he was very adamant that it would take you straight into, like, in general, a stage like a level 3 qualification.
And
I remember again, I remember him telling these students, and actually, were they even students? Now I look back on it, I think that they were his clients, that he had almost said to them, if you do this, this is going to help this is going to help you. But I mean, I don't.
I know it's so odd and it's so bizarre. But really, so you ended up saying you'd signed the contract, but you kind of, managed to get out of it. But he kind of made some empty threats, didn't he, as well, when you kind of wanted to back out of it? And you had to speak to citizens' advice as well, didn't you? You got some advice on it.
Gosh, I did, Steph. Yeah, your memory is much better than mine. I did. I went to them twice, I think, and spoke to them. And he did back down, obviously, because
he knew that what he was doing was wrong.
But then am I remembering correctly? Some of the text messages you got from him were just you forwarded them on, didn't you? One of them you sent on to one of your colleagues who was was he in counselling?
Psychotherapist, yeah.
Psychotherapy. And I remember him just quashing all of it, didn't he?
Yeah.
I felt better when you spoke to me, because again, because of where my mind was as well, this just was such a horrible situation for me at the time.
Yeah.
I think now, if this happened to me now, I would have a very, very different response to it. But then my baby was small. I was such a different place.
I think as well that this is exactly the type of person at that time in their life that he attracts. And I think that this is what people have to be careful of, because sometimes you do end up finding something when you're resonating at a certain level, and you kind of have a low confidence about yourself, or you don't necessarily you're in that place, you may not even be aware of
you need something, aren't you? And you just, and again with that, it was local to me, it was cheap, it seemed like a really good option. I can do an evening when my daughter's in bed at home, and it just seemed it was too good to be true, and it wasn't true.
Exactly. I'll try and so the text that he sent me, I still got them on my phone, actually. I remember sort of saying to him, in the end, I said, I don't think I'm going to return to the I don't know if I said, I think this is after I'd said, I don't think I'll come to the second class for whatever reason. Maybe I did only attend one. I can't really remember.
He made it about you and your issues.
I'm going to get it and find it, because it's just
said. I remember thinking, how dare he? And again, as a professional,
somebody who works with people who,
that's amazing.
I carry everything over on my phone, so it should be
like 3 years.
Let's see if it's there. Okay, so I'd asked him for more information about the course and whether I could do it in smaller chunks, and he was really pushing for me to invest in the whole year. And he was just saying, it will save you more money and this, that and the other. If you're something like depends if you wish to be a serious counselling student, it saves money to do all three in one. And it's like, well, I'm really trying to feel it out at the moment. So I said, hi, I hope you're well. Thank you for the information. I'm still trying to figure out my plan of action and what I want to do regarding the course. I won't be attending this evening, as was working over the weekend and haven't had a chance to rest and recharge yet. I'll be in touch about next week. Thanks a lot. And then he replied, okay, Steph, we won't expect you this week then. If you find it hard to find the energy to come once a week and sit for 3 hours, you'll probably struggle with the foundation course attendance levels. Have you been to your GP for a checkup recently? If energy levels are low, it suggests something deeper or simply a lack of interest in the subject material. Maybe just a 3-month course would be better for you at the moment, if you are so fragile. Take care in any case. Just let us know what you decide. Kindest regards. And then he followed it up almost immediately with another text that said, when I was studying in London, I didn't get home until 1:30 to 2:30 a.m. each week. Phew, I remember it well. And I just couldn't believe it. So he sent that to me on the 27th of June, 2018. And on the 2nd of July, I replied with, hello there, I've decided I won't be returning to the classes. Please, can you remove all my personal data from your records? Thanks. Because after that point, you'd had all that stuff going on with you. And I was so kind of livid. I thought, if I say, you're an arsehole, this, that, and the other, I just thought it's not worth it. I'm just going to say, please just remove all of my information and be done with it. Thanks very much.
I mean, how fragile. I mean, that got me that how inappropriate. Could you imagine saying that to someone?
I know somebody who actually was, it's
Fragile.
very manipulative. It's scary to think that he used that kind of language to it's very emotive. It like makes you feel like, oh gosh, I am being oversensitive.
Well, he wants a
actually.
reaction, didn't he?
Yeah.
And do you know what's just come to mind when you've said that? Do you remember I did the same. You said to me, get him to take all of your details off of your thing. And I sent them a couple of emails, but I kept getting them. And then I got another one that said, it was a month or two after, and they rewrote the kind of email that they would send to everyone. And at the beginning, it now said, not to be mistaken with C-Tech, didn't it?
Yeah.
And
I thought that's
actually,
brilliant. I think he really must have done his research and realised that what you thought you were signing up for, it was like what do you call it, like a misrepresentation or something like that.
Well, that's what I had to say, and that's the information that the Citizens Advice Bureau gave me, and that's what. So, but he was naughty because he shouldn't have even sent me that email. I'd specifically asked for my details, but it was like he intentionally sent it, and I think I got two of exactly the same thing, and then obviously didn't hear anything after. But it was almost sending that to me as if to say, well, you didn't understand that. Don't be mistaken. That was your fault, you know. And you know, and I do feel very naive about the whole thing even now, you know. But again, I've learned that where I was at the time really put a filter on what I allowed to, you know, what I did and the decisions I made.
I'm grateful for the experience, actually. I know it was more difficult for you, but I am grateful for what I got out of it with, like, you know, meeting you.
Oh my gosh, I wouldn't change it for the world.
Exactly. And then on top of that, you know, the real learning curve I had because of it. And I learned exactly what I didn't want from a course. And, you know, I learned also that my intuition from immediately from stepping in that door, from that second I put my foot in the door, I knew that something was wrong. And I was there are often times in your life where you think, I don't feel like this is right, but I'm going to just carry on anyway. And we can stick something out and then regret it and think that wasn't a good experience. But in this situation, it proved to me how strong my intuition could be about something. So I was grateful for that. But the other thing I'm grateful for is the fact that neither you or I got put off from actually pursuing our, our passion for wanting to go deeper. But you didn't necessarily carry on down the counselling route, did you?
No, I didn't. No. I had always been interested in hypnotherapy. And I, again, the point my daughter was born and I was able to try and find the time to do courses, it was quite tricky at the time for me to do that. And I did a training in clinical hypnotherapy when my daughter was, so she must have been 2.5, 3 years old. And I would go to, I actually did it in Nottingham, and it was a year course, and it was over 12 full weekends. And then we would do where I would go to Nottingham, and it was the first time I'd left my daughter overnight. On those like 12 occasions throughout that year. It almost felt like a spa weekend to me when I would go away, because I had like a bed to myself, and I could, I missed her terribly, but it was a lovely course. And I did that for the year and qualified in that. And then more recently, so the last year, I've done CBT, cognitive behavioral hypnotherapy. So it's an additional hypnotherapy qualification, but with a structure of CBT. And I did that with the UK College of Hypnotherapy or Hypnosis and Hypnotherapy. And again, just going back to what we got before, you know, with that bad experience, it enabled me to really check out what I was doing. And I felt really happy with the 2 subsequent courses that I'd done afterwards. And then obviously with the course I've done recently, it's added such a lovely structure to client work, whereas the first year the course was brilliant. But this one, the more recent one, is very evidence-based. And it just feels right for what I want to do with clients now. So I'm I've finished everything that I need to do in that. I'm just waiting for the diploma, and then I'm going to update my website, and hopefully it's probably going to take a while, to actually start doing a bit more work.
Rome wasn't built in a day, was it?
Yeah, but just kind of family commitments and things as well. But it's kind of something I've been doing in the background, which is lovely, while my daughter's young, and so yeah, it's great. And like I say, unfortunately, it did start with that really horrible experience, actually. But again, I think everything happens for a reason. We're led to these paths, aren't we? And everything I look back at now, I don't regret any of it, because it's got me where I am now. And
exactly. Yeah. And that UK College of Hypnotherapy, that course is accredited, isn't it, as well?
Like it's brilliant. And do you know what, Steph, as well, I think it's more about, and what I've noticed with people is when we can kind of drop into almost a deeper conversation, that's where a lot of people benefit. And actually doing this course has given me the structure and the ability to be able to work with appropriate clients within my competence, but then also be able to touch on a deeper conversation, which I can see can be really, really helpful for people. So yeah, I'm excited. It's been nice. It's been the last few years of kind of studying and putting things in place, and when I have the availability to be able to move forward with it, I feel like I've learned so much. And I have such a different view on anxiety now. I never used to be able to even look at the word, and I used to feel anxious looking at the word, and now it's just a completely different relationship with it. And I think my main message really that I want to share with people is it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to not feel okay, and that it's getting people okay with that.
I think it's interesting that you managed to do something so positive with anxiety during probably one of the most anxious periods of recent history for humanity.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right.
Very good use of your time.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the CBH, so the cognitive behavioral hypnotherapy, in terms of tools, is fantastic. There's a huge toolkit of things that that there's something that suits everybody. But again, just having a slightly deeper conversation as well about our experience of life, and actually why how our feelings are coming about to us, and those conversations, there's just something very, very different that you can see within minutes that really can move you along. I mean, it felt to me when I suffered anxiety that I needed to do a lot of work on that brokenness. I'm so broken with anxiety, and actually it's one thought away. It's and you see things completely differently. And and again, the tools from hypnotherapy are amazing for that. I mean, I love helping people with relaxation and breath work. That's been something that's been really big for me recently, probably more so in the last couple of years. But we do have just to have an awareness of our body and what it's doing, and even when it's doing things that doesn't feel right, we're working beautifully. It is working beautifully. All those times that I looked at how anxious I felt, given what was going through my mind at that time, my body was responding perfectly.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it?
Yeah, but I never knew that because no one ever told that to me. No one ever really shared that with me. I didn't, so yeah, I mean, it's busy to be at home with a little one, but I've been able to learn so much just from obviously the courses I've done, but books, and we're so it's funny because it's really easy to kind of say, well, social media and internet access, it's kind of a negative, but actually everything I've learned and everything I've read, I've purchased through the internet, or I've looked up a course through the internet, and it's about that balance, isn't it? I guess it's having that balance.
Exactly.
And just the access to information, it's I've just been really, really grateful for it. And now I just feel and it's been beautiful to share with my daughter as well, and I learn a lot from her. And this is the thing with kids, isn't it? We do learn from them because she's got a really sore throat at the moment. She hasn't suffered at all these last few days because she's got no thinking about this sore throat. She's not worried about, I'm going going to go to, I'm going to be tired when I go to work, or, oh, I'm going to miss this, or what's so-and-so going to think of me, or, I look a bit rough, I look a bit tired. Like, she has no thinking about a sore throat. Clearly she's not very well, but she's fine, she's fine herself. And we just, unfortunately, we as we grow, we get all this thinking, don't we? And it means something. We're like meaning making all the time. And I mean, she's just, I learn from her every single day that, we're going to experience being human, but it's kind of perfect. It's kind of perfect as it is.
Exactly. And sometimes I think that's we fall out of step with that, because we get into our heads and overthink things, and especially if you're our type of person who is a very cognitive, like I don't know, I just think that we're both quite thinky people, aren't we? So we are quite thinky people, but no, I agree. And I think sometimes you just have to sort of trust the process and trust where you are, and just like we did with that course, even if it was a bad experience, we have to trust the fact that we found ourselves in the right place at the right time for the right lesson. I just wondered if you've got a website or any social media that you were,
so I have a website, which until I've got my diploma, I'm not actually doing anything with. So the company is Afresh Hypnotherapy, so it's AFRESH hypnotherapy.com. At the moment, it's just currently kind of sat there. My details are on there. I can, I'm happy to do Zoom calls with people, and that's worked quite well. And I think I spoke to you actually, some of the case studies I was doing on my recent course. I had a few people that were actually quite conscious of even just being on the camera, and we did quite a few calls on the phone, and they were so successful. And it's really opened my mind too, because a lot of courses I've been on have kind of, especially hypnotherapy, have kind of said, we don't really want to be doing them on Zoom. We don't want to, it's not ideal, which is fair enough. And then obviously with COVID, all of these people are suddenly like, oh, we're going to do it on Zoom, because they're not going to be able to work, right? So
I've had a lot of hypnotherapy, and actually I've done a lot of hypnotherapy on Zoom or over, like video calls. For me, it's always worked, but I guess I'm a very suggestive person anyway. And, I've been able to enjoy it. I like to listen to meditations and podcasts. I'm a listening person. So it doesn't really affect me whether or not the person's in the room with me or if they're on the internet. I've even had counselling and psychotherapy sessions over Zoom, and this is way before the pandemic. So
okay.
Yeah, so I'm talking for years I've done it this way. I'm kind of like an internety Zoomy person. So I've always kind of been quite comfortable with it.
Yeah, I mean, from courses that I did probably 3.5, 4 years ago that have been in person, but we've had catch-up groups online. I've been very used to, I'm quite happy to do things online. I think it depends. The first training that I did, the hypnosis was very trancey. It was seen as very trancey, and that, it's obviously very good to be in a room with someone. But with the cognitive behavioral hypnotherapy, it is very focused attention. There's a real awareness there, so there isn't, I think some hypnotherapists, that work a certain way really do want to be face to face, and I would prefer to be face to face. I think I just like that. I think
that's the ideal situation, but in a situation where we have to factor in these contingencies, there's nothing wrong with doing it online, is there really?
No, absolutely. I think it's fantastic. And like I say, even just having a conversation over the phone, I think sometimes when one sense is taken away, it really does amplify the others. And I've had some lovely calls with people that have, they've really seen things in themselves, and they've probably just been sat there in their pajamas talking to me, in their bedroom. And again, a lot of people could have a lot of thinking about that, but actually
maybe they've got their guard down a bit more, maybe when you're sitting in a strange room, in a strange environment, you feel a bit more boundaried and a bit more protective of yourself because you're not in a comfortable environment. So it may even be putting people in exactly the situation they need to be in to be open to that kind of work.
And it's what works for them, isn't it? And the thing is, I think with COVID as well now, and with lockdown, anybody that wants to talk about anxiety probably doesn't either want to, some of them probably don't want to be traveling to someone else's place to the very issue that they've, actually being in their own home is probably at that moment really, really useful for them, and they feel safe there, and they feel like you say, they're not on guard. They're able to just feel comfortable, and to be able to just be at home afterwards, continue to relax, not necessarily have to fight traffic or wonder where they are. I mean, I've been to, I've done all sorts of therapy, and on myself, I've had therapy, and I mean, you don't particularly want to be thinky. You don't want to be worrying about parking when you get there. You don't want to be worrying. So actually Zoom is, or the telephone is a really, really good way of doing it. You wouldn't go for a massage and then want to go and sit on a train afterwards, would you?
Not really.
Same. If you can
it's the same, isn't it? It's the same thing. It's if you're getting into a mindset and it's going to be a healing mindset, you want to be able to let that completely flow. And if you have something that's going to break that up for you, which is like maybe worrying about parking or travel time to and from or whatever, it can really remove a certain aspect of participation, whether or not you're aware of it. So but that's great that it's that you're able to sort of use that medium in order to reach your clients. So you've got your website, which is A Fresh Hypnotherapy. Is that .com or .co.uk?
It's .com.
And did you say you've got an Instagram page as well?
Yeah, I do. Again, A Fresh Hypnotherapy. I've not released anything on there at the moment. Obviously, with the hypnotherapy work that I've been doing based on my first course, that's through, it's been word of mouth, actually. And to be honest, I like that. I really like that. And it's probably not a great business model for me at the moment. But I really like that. I really like that when I'm working with someone, it's because somebody else has said, actually, I've had a few sessions with Mel, and we've really, they've had some great insights, and they've really seen things in themselves. And again, the work is done by them. We're just having some really interesting conversations, and using the CBH tools, and using the initial hypnotherapy, the clinical hypnotherapy tools, which is fantastic. So I'm really excited to be using the CBH more moving forward. Again, it's probably just things going on in my life at the moment. It's probably going to be a few months where I'm not going to be doing that.
That's fine. It will start when it needs to. The process will kind of come together when it's time. So I'm really glad that we could get together, and the process was able to allow us to have this conversation today, because I thought it's really useful for you to share the work that you're going to be doing, because I think it's going to be really good, and I'm really interested in your course, so interested, and I really want to study it.
I thoroughly recommend it.
But also I think it's really important for everybody to understand that we shouldn't quit on our aspirations due to a bump in the road, and we should also be very mindful of people who don't always have the best interests of their students or clients at heart, and that even in a caring field, a therapeutic field like counselling and psychotherapy, you can find some people who are behaving questionably, and to keep your wits about you and trust your intuition about that type of thing. So
definitely trust your intuition. And like I say, it's funny how I pushed against it, even though I knew I had a sense, and I still did it because of the, it's a funny one.
That's sometimes what we end up doing, isn't it? We go against our better knowledge, because we kind of think that the greater good is pushing through those kind of feelings, when sometimes it's worth paying attention.
It was my own. I could see how important my things were for me, that I was able to ignore what was actually going on in front of me, because I was trying to kind of prove, that I could do something. But I learned a lot from it.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it, and I'm sure we'll have another chat at another time, and I'll catch up with you when you're in full flow with your practice, and I'll have studied it at that point too. So thanks very much, and I will speak to you soon.
Thanks.
Take care. Bye.